Hello, and thanks for joining me. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how easy it is to launch a multi-node cluster on Microsoft Azure running our SQL analytics platform, DBX. So let's get started. We'll be doing 4 different things during this session. First, we'll describe the cluster configuration. Next, we'll demonstrate the steps involved in deployment of the cluster on Azure. While the deployment is going on, we'll take a few minutes to just do a brief review of the highlights of the product. And then we'll go back to the Azure portal, verify that the system has been deployed, and then show how easy it is to connect to the system. And then, of course, you can populate databases, run queries, etc. The cluster we're going to spin up consists of identical nodes where each node is a DS14. Now the DS14 has 224 gigabytes of local flash SSD storage. In our configuration, we connect it as network attached to premium storage. Now premium storage is Microsoft Azure storage that guarantees a certain amount of bandwidth, while at the same time it is very resilient and durable. Azure ensures that there are multiple copies kept, and as soon as a write is committed, you know it's safe. It's extremely durable. It also supports snapshots, making disaster recovery easy. And of course, one of the big economic advantages is with persistent data stored on premium storage, the more expensive compute nodes, the DS14s, can be turned off during idle periods while your data is still maintained safe on premium storage. So let's spin up this cluster.
First step is to log into the Azure portal, which I'll do right now using this account, and enter my password. And this will come up with the main welcoming screen for the Azure portal. Step 2 is to go to this GitHub link posted by Microsoft, where a template has been created and saved for cluster deployment. This is a temporary workaround. Eventually, it'll be fully integrated into Azure Marketplace, and this extra step would not be necessary, but it's not such a big deal to go around this way. So once you get to this page, all you have to do is hit this blue button that says Deploy to Azure, and that'll get you straight back into the Azure portal with this template already set up. And there's only a handful of parameters that we have to enter now. That'll start the deployment of the cluster. So it'll come up in just a second. And as you can see, the parameters are very few. First is the location. At the moment, it's West US is the only one that's supported. And we need a name for the storage account. And what I've found to be quite useful is to use a name followed by a timestamp, which makes it unique and easy to figure out who owns it. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'll use that for the domain name, which is attached to the IP addresses of the nodes that I actually spun up. I need a unique admin password. And then the last two parameters are what kind of node you want. In this case, we'll use the bigger ones, the DS14s, and the last parameter is how many. And again, right now, there's only a choice of 3, but once it's GA in the marketplace, you can spin up hundreds of nodes if you like. So for this demo, I'll use 4, say OK, and create a new resource group, and again, give it that same string name so I can identify it. And the last step is the legal terms saying you are ready to purchase this cluster. So as soon as it comes ready, say buy, and then create. And that should kick it off. It says deploying template. It should have said that deployment started. So this is now going to run for 20 plus minutes. And rather than wait for it, let's go back and look at the architecture of our software and make some competitive comparisons.
So let's introduce our product in the context of what the market is actually asking for today. So in this era of many new data sources and very strong time to market pressures, a data analytics platform must meet these market needs. So the first one is on-demand spin up, and you should be able to spin this up on multiple clouds, so you're not locked into any one. And another requirement would be essentially a simplicity of load and go. You don't have the time, you cannot afford to have a 6-month IT project cycle to design the data model or carefully place the data that's sympathetic to the query load that you might run, because essentially you don't have the time and you don't know what queries are going to be run. Another requirement, of course, which goes with the cloud is elastic scaling. Data is growing very rapidly, and your system should expand as the data grows. And of course, the most important, low TCO. So ideally, it should be pay for use, and you should be able to turn off the system, or at least switch off the bulk of your costs when the system is idle. So our solution meets all of these needs and more. So as we touched on briefly, our architecture leverages the object/block store that most clouds provide. In the case of Microsoft Azure, we're using the premium storage, which is really a block store with some bandwidth guarantees. And that's what we use for persistent data, which means at very low cost, we can keep the data very safe on the premium storage, the block store. And the expensive part of the cluster is really the VMs, the DS14s, which you can just shut down during idle periods. We also support very high speed load and unload, which is very unusual for a relational SQL database system. But we've maintained the full featured SQL, and therefore the entire ecosystem of ETL BI tools is fully supported. And last, there is no performance tuning needed because we've buried all the intelligence under the hood. Okay, so we're back to the Azure portal, and as you can see, it says deployment succeeded. This was the name that we gave to this cluster, and everything's fine. So we scroll down, you can look at 0, 1, 2, 3. These are the 4 virtual machines in the cluster that we asked for. And if we click on the first one, VM0, which would in our logical structure be the head node. That's the way the template has been configured. And all we need from here is the public IP address so we can access it. So I'll copy this, and then we can connect to it using our browser-based interface to the SQL analytics platform. Let's do that next. Okay, to access the system, all I need to do is go to the address of the VM0 that we just saw, go to port 2400 and access XtADM, which is our admin tool. And it should come in with the login screen like it does. Login as DBA, which is a default user that has been set up. And again, we use the password that we specified when we spun up the system. So now we're ready to go. It's basically saying you're there, and there is no server in the sense of database servers, the highest level entity in our system. Underneath the database server, you create databases and tables and so on and so forth. And you can do all of that from here. You can administer the users, you can set up servers, you can create databases, and then you can submit SQL queries as well. So we'll do all of this in the next session, where we demonstrate creating a database, populating the tables with data from the object store, and then running some complex queries. But for this session, we'll stop right here and just wrap up. So just to summarize, the deployment template right now, until it's fully integrated into Azure Marketplace, is here. And clicking this with your Azure login, you can deploy DBX right now. All our documentation is available online. Again, a very simple registration is all you need to do, and you have access to all our manuals. And beyond that, any other questions, feel free to either contact our sales group email or contact me personally. Thank you very much for your time.